They toasted under a chandelier that looked like a frozen waterfall. My sister's fiancé raised his glass. My mother's smile sharpened like a knife. Then she said it. Do not get possessive, Evelyn. That house is family property. You are just the temporary holder. Laughter flickered around the room like static. I kept one hand on the envelope resting beside my plate. Cream paper, heavier than it looked. Inside was the will and the letter from the firm on Walnut Street, with the notary seal pressed into the corner like a thumbprint of the law. The estate was valued at roughly $2 million, the appraiser had told me, voice careful, eyes soft. A lifetime in brick timber and land taxes. My grandmother's name still glowed on the deed like an old lighthouse. I breathed through my nose, in and out, a trick an old radio host taught on late nights when I could not sleep. Shorten the sentences when the heart runs fast. Speak like you are stepping on stones across a river. The violinist slid into a lazy standard. Servers floated past with tiny lobster rolls. In this house, my house, the party swelled like a tide I had not invited. My father clinked a fork against glass and called for a photo. I stepped into the frame chin, lifted back straight the way my grandmother taught me at church gatherings. Head high even when your knees shake. But the line that stung was not the first line. It was the second, the one said close to my ear, so quiet only I could hear it. Sign a fair division after dessert, my sister murmured. Half to me for fairness. You can keep the savings. People will think you are kind. Kind. That was the word the city uses when it wants your parking space. Kind is the word that follows the knife. I looked at the cake, 3 tiers, buttercream peonies, a ring of sugared pistachios at the base like coins on a grave. The decorator had piped. Congratulations in a script that looked like a river. I kept my palm on the envelope. Warm now, edges softening. Here is what you should know before we go any further. I am not helpless. I work with numbers all week and with silence on Sundays. I track risk for a living. I know when something does not add up. My grandmother raised me on stories that end with a ledger balanced and a lesson paid in full. She left this house to me for a reason. She put in writing with a date and 2 witnesses. Still, I let the music play. I let the toast hang in the air like steam above a pot. People listen better when they believe the stove is off. A cousin asked for a tour. Another wanted to see the office with the lake print on the wall. I smiled and pointed. They drifted like tourists in a museum, naming things they would change, asking what I planned to do with the small library under the stairs. My mother corrected my answers. Our library, she said. She had always wanted to paint it pale blue. My father nodded and told a story about sanding the banister back when his knees could handle it, which they never did. Do not mistake me for calm. Inside there was weather. I heard my grandmother's radio in my head, that steady voice from a long-gone host when they try to take the roof, check the nails. When they claim the floor, check the joists. When they tell you to be kind, check the math. The band switched to something faster. Phones came out. Feet moved. My sister pulled me close enough that our earrings kissed. A clean signature, she said, and this family will finally be balanced. Balanced, how I asked. By feelings, she said. By respect. Respect in writing, I said, is a curious thing. I did not raise my voice. I did not throw the cake. I did not ruin her night with a scene. I simply placed the envelope on the tablecloth, slid out 1 page, and let the embossed letterhead catch the light. My mother's smile thinned. She hates paperwork. Paperwork is where stories stop pretending. Later, I said as a server leaned in with champagne. We will talk later. Now, the early call to you, listener, watcher, late-night friend, at a kitchen table somewhere. Tell me where you are watching from, and subscribe. The next 5 minutes will tell you how fast kin can turn into creditors. I stepped to the window for air. The lawn rolled toward the hedge like a green sea. Wind moved the lanterns. Somewhere a neighbor's dog barked at the noise of celebration and money. In the glass, my face looked like my grandmother's did at the end, composed readable only to the few who had earned the right to read it. She used to say that money is a language. People reveal their grammar when they think you cannot hear. A buzz at my wrist. Not a timestamp, just the feeling of arrival. A message from an unknown number. The preview line said, check your email subject line, will clarification. I did not open it there by the window. I am slow on purpose in rooms full of hungry eyes. I tucked the phone into my pocket and returned to the table. The master of ceremonies called for stories about the couple. Laughter brightened the way a lamp brightens when someone finds the dimmer. My father talked about a childhood bicycle and a hill too steep to ride. My mother told a tale about my sister fixing a paper crown with glue and glitter. I told a short story about love being work you volunteer for, not a tax you impose. Some people clapped, some did not. Plates were cleared. The cake knife flashed. My sister's fiancé fed her a bite. She smeared frosting on his nose. Someone shouted for a kiss. It felt like a commercial about a life that is already over by the time the music fades. Then the first small shock, the kind you pretend not to notice, at a crowded table, a printed email slipped under my bread plate. My name at the top in bold. The subject line matched the message on my phone. Will clarification. I did not need to read much. One paragraph was enough. It said the trust officer had located an addendum my grandmother signed a month before her last hospital stay. The addendum contained a single sentence written in her hand. The sentence named me as sole executor with full discretion to deny access to the property for cause, and then defined cause in a way that made my scalp prickle. I slid the email back under the plate, like a note passed in school. My mother's knuckles went white around her glass. She had seen just enough to understand. She had not seen nearly enough. But what they did not know was this. I had already begun to collect the things that talk when people lie. Doorbell footage. A voicemail that started with a sigh and ended with a plan. A text where a cousin mistyped the word equitable into something too honest. I do not swing in the first round. I let the tape roll. I let the paint dry. Aunt Carol leaned over the centerpiece, all breath and perfume. Be generous, dear, she said. Your grandmother would want peace. My grandmother wrote plainly, I said. Peace and plain writing like each other. The band took a break. The room shifted to that soft murmur a theater gets when the lights are up, but the show is not done. My sister tapped the envelope with a painted nail. After dessert, she said, we will help you do the right thing. After dessert, I said, you will hear my answer. Here is the promise, friend. I will tell you the answer in the next chapter. There is a reason I stayed quiet while their laughter hit like sleet. There is a reason the envelope stayed shut. There is a reason the dog kept barking at the hedge as if something were moving out there in the dark. Tell me where you are watching from, and subscribe. The part that matters is coming. The chandelier light had barely cooled from the engagement party when I found myself alone again. I always end up alone after gatherings. That has been the rhythm of my life. 32 years old, yet still treated like a guest in rooms I pay for. My name is Evelyn. By trade, I am a finance manager at a large insurance company. By temperament, a quiet observer who knows how numbers betray greed long before words do. I earn a steady income, keep 6 figures in savings, and hold this house valued at nearly $2 million as both inheritance and reminder. Still, my family calls me the Vault. Not daughter, not sister, just the Vault. I live with silence most days. Mornings start with coffee at the same oak table my grandmother polished for 50 years. Keys on the counter, unopened mail stacked in even piles, receipts folded into envelopes with dates on the corner. I track, I file, I watch. Silence is a discipline. But silence can turn on you. At that party, my sister's laugh cut sharper than glass. She whispered near the cake, just sign Evelyn. Half the estate to me. You still have your salary, your savings. Be fair. Fair. That word has been bent until it breaks. I nodded that night, nodded so smoothly even my mother thought she had won. I raised my glass-clinked crystal, smiled for photographs, but my fingers tapped against the envelope in a rhythm only I knew. They thought I would fold. They always do. The following morning, I sat at my grandmother's writing desk, its drawers lined with lavender paper. I opened my laptop drafted emails, one to a private law firm downtown, one to a digital forensics service, one to myself, copying the message I had received during the party, will clarification. What they did not know was that the house came with more than walls and windows. It came with surveillance cameras discreetly mounted after my grandmother fell once and insisted on extra safety. Those cameras had continued to watch. Every visit, every whispered conversation in hallways, every hand on the lockbox. I had seen clips already. My mother testing keys when she thought no one was home. My sister speaking low into her phone. Once she signs, it is ours. We can refinance. Move fast before she changes her mind. I saved the files on a separate drive, labeled with bland names like garden photos and tax drafts. No one bothers with tax drafts. And yet, I went on with my week as if nothing cracked. I drove to work, sorted claims, signed off on audits. I lunched with colleagues who assumed my quietness meant contentment. In truth, it meant patience. Revenge-like interest accrues when you leave it alone long enough. At home, my father called twice. Both times he spoke of logistics, renovations, rental opportunities, how the family might use the upstairs rooms. Not once did he ask how I slept. Not once did he ask what I wanted. One evening, my sister dropped by unannounced. She walked straight into the kitchen like she owned the air. She poured herself wine from a bottle I had opened for solitude, then leaned against the counter. "Sign soon," she said, as though it were small talk. "People are starting to ask questions. Better to appear generous." "Appearances," I replied, "are easy to arrange." She laughed, not catching the edge. Then her phone buzzed, and I saw on the screen a group chat titled, "Estate Plan." She did not notice that I noticed. I let her leave with her glass still half full. That night, I forwarded every relevant message, every file to the attorney whose name I had underlined 3 times in my notes. I did not yet pull the trigger. I simply prepared the chamber. This is how betrayal operates quietly at first, with smiles in public and daggers in whispers. And this is how revenge prepares quietly also, with folders, with copies, with patience, sharpened by humiliation. Do not mistake my calm for forgiveness. Calm is the mask you wear until the stage is ready. And so I waited. But what they did not know was that I had already begun to turn their own words into evidence. Tell me, listener, have you ever been the vault for your family? Write it in the comments. And subscribe, because the cracks in their performance will show sooner than they think. The week after, the engagement party stretched like old gum. Each day I woke to the same ceiling beams, the same lavender scent left behind in the wood of my grandmother's desk. But something in the house had shifted. It no longer felt like shelter. It felt like a contested prize. I had spent my life auditing other people's risks. Now I was living inside one. It began with dinner. My parents invited me to what they called a casual family talk. They chose an Italian place downtown with framed photos of Venice gondolas and waiters who pressed Parmesan over your plate until you said stop. I sat across from them, my sister at my side, her fiancé leaning in with the easy confidence of someone who thought the future had already been signed over. My mother began lightly twirling pasta. "You know, Evelyn, 2 million is too much responsibility for one person. Houses that size eat money. Taxes, repairs, insurance, it never ends. Wouldn't it be wiser to share the weight?" My father nodded. "Your sister and her fiancé are building a life. Imagine the wedding photographs on those stairs. It makes sense." Sense. That was the word they used when they wanted to repaint truth. My sister placed a folder on the table as if we were at a business meeting. Inside were draft papers, property transfer agreements printed off the internet. She slid a pen toward me. "All we need is your signature. Half to me, clean and simple. It will keep the peace." I held the pen. Cold metal, familiar weight. I clicked it once, let the sound cut through their hopeful silence, then set it down. "Peace," I said, "is never bought by carving up the dead." Her fiancé leaned back smirking. "She is dramatic. It is just a house." I looked at him. "If it is just a house, why are you at this table?" The smirk faltered. My mother cleared her throat, redirected. "Evelyn, you have savings. You have a career. Your sister has always dreamed of a home. Be generous." Generous. Fair. Balanced. They rotated the same words like dice they hoped would land in their favor. I ate my meal quietly, chewing through bitterness thicker than the bread they brought. When the plates cleared, I excused myself to the restroom. But instead of returning, I lingered near the bar, phone in hand. I opened the estate's camera feed. There, recorded from 2 nights ago, my mother and sister rifling through the desk drawer that held the safe key. Their whispers caught clear enough. "She will not fight us. She never fights." I saved the clip, forwarded it to myself twice. One copy went to a hidden folder on a cloud drive, the other onto a flash stick in my coat pocket. When I returned to the table, they were laughing, pretending nothing had happened. I smiled too. Pretend is contagious. But the real break came a few days later. My father called late, his voice rough with drink. "You are making this harder than it needs to be. Do not embarrass us. Sign the papers before Christmas dinner. Family is watching." Before I could answer, he hung up. Embarrass. That word landed heavier than the rest. They feared humiliation more than loss. That fear would become the lever. So I began my own quiet performance. I visited them carrying wine, smiling at neighbors, letting them believe I was bending. I sent polite texts. I even agreed to host Christmas Eve under the chandelier again. They relaxed, thinking my silence meant surrender. But silence, as I have learned, is simply the sound before the storm. What they did not know was that every email, every whisper, every late-night call had already been copied, and when the time came, I would let their own words damn them. Tell me, listener, have you ever watched your family plan against you while smiling to your face? Share it below. And subscribe, because the mask is about to slip. By December, the air had sharpened. Frost drew lace patterns on the window panes of the house my grandmother left me. Outside, neighbors strung lights. Inside, I strung patience. Christmas Eve was their chosen battleground. They thought they had picked the stage, but I was the one arranging the lights. Each day leading up to it, I collected more than groceries. I collected proof. Every camera clip went into folders with bland names like utility records. Every voicemail was transcribed and stored in triplicate. My sister's email, the one that said, "Half the estate is mine by right," I printed on thick paper and slipped into a plain manila envelope. Evidence is always more frightening when it rustles in your hand. I hired a lawyer downtown. He wore glasses with heavy frames and spoke with the kind of calm you pay for. I handed him the drive. He raised an eyebrow at the volume. "You have enough here to draw blood without lifting a knife," he said. "Keep it ready," I told him. "I will decide when." In the evenings, I still attended family dinners. I listened to my mother talk about centerpieces, my father about tax deductions, my sister about renovations she planned as if the deed were already hers. I smiled and poured wine. I even bought gifts expensive enough to keep their confidence alive, impersonal enough to show my detachment. One night, my sister cornered me in the hall. "It will be easier if you stop resisting," she whispered. Her perfume was too sweet, cloying like overripe fruit. Families should not fight over money. "Then stop fighting me," I said. She laughed, certain she had the upper hand. That laugh became another note in my growing symphony of resentment. I returned to the quiet of the library each night. My grandmother's handwriting still lingered in the margins of her books. Keep receipts, keep faith, keep watch. I followed each command. By the week before Christmas, I had rehearsed my part. The dining room would hold the stage. The chandelier would light their faces. The turkey, the wine, the laughter, those would be the curtain. And then, I would raise mine. I told no one. Secrets gain power when they remain whole. The night before, I walked the halls alone. The air smelled of pine and dust. I touched the banister, the one my father claimed he had sanded years ago but never truly did. I remembered my grandmother's voice. "Do not yield when they call you unkind. Kindness without respect is just theft in a prettier dress." I slept lightly, waking before dawn. I ironed the tablecloth, set the silver, polished the glasses until they caught the morning sun like ice. Everything gleamed. And then I waited. They would come hungry for celebration. They would leave choking on their own words. But what they did not know was that I had already decided Christmas dinner would be the end of pretense. Their laughter would curdle before dessert. Tell me, listener, have you ever staged your silence until the right night arrived? Comment your story, and subscribe because the storm is about to break. The house glowed that night. Candles flickered in the windows, the chandelier blazed above the long table, and garlands looped along the banister like ribbons on a gift. My family arrived with bags of presents, coats brushed with snow, voices already loud with wine and expectation. They believed this was their night. They believed I had softened. We ate. Turkey carved potatoes past glasses filled again and again. My father told the same stories, the ones that always made him look better than he was. My mother scolded me lightly for not decorating the upstairs as though she already owned it. My sister held her fiancé's hand and smiled like a queen surveying land already conquered. I smiled back. Smiling costs nothing. After dessert plates were cleared, after laughter had swelled to its fullest, I rose from my chair. The room hushed, expecting a toast. Instead, I placed a small black remote on the table. One button. A screen rolled down from the far wall, my grandmother's old projector space once used for family slideshows. Tonight it held something else. The first clip appeared, grainy footage from the hallway camera. My mother keys jangling, whispering. "She won't fight us. She never fights. My sister's voice answered, once she signs, it's ours. We can refinance. Move fast before she changes her mind. The table stilled. Forks froze halfway to mouths. My mother's wineglass trembled against her ring. The second clip played. My sister's email displayed in bold letters across the screen. Half the estate is mine by right. Evelyn will fold if we push her hard enough. Gasps circled the table. A cousin shifted uncomfortably. My father muttered something about context, but his voice cracked. Then came the voicemail. My father, late at night. Do not embarrass us. Sign before Christmas dinner. Family is watching. Now the family was watching indeed. I let the silence stretch. I could feel their eyes swing from the screen to me, back to the screen. My sister's fiancé whispered, "What is this?" She pulled her hand from his and snapped. She's twisting everything. I stepped closer to the table. Number, I am showing you exactly what you said. No twists, just your own words. My mother stood, face flushed. Turn it off, Evelyn. This is indecent. We are family. Family, I said, does not plan to steal what was never theirs. The chandelier hummed faintly overhead. No one moved. Finally, my sister exploded. You are nothing but a miser. You think money makes you better. You think $2 million and a pile of savings mean you are loved. No one loves you, Evelyn. We tolerate you for what you hold. Her words cracked the air like thunder. Gasps followed. Some hands covered mouths. Some eyes darted away. I let her words hang there, then answered with calm, colder than the snow outside. Now the whole world will hear what you just said. I tapped the remote again. This time, instead of playing on the wall, the files uploaded directly. Every clip, every email, every voicemail already queued to post. A notification blinked on my phone, content shared. Visibility public. The room erupted. My mother reached across the table, grasping at my wrist, but too late. My sister's fiancé pushed back his chair, face pale. Cousins whispered already, checking their own phones. The humiliation spread faster than fire. Why, my father rasped. Because you erased me in front of everyone, I said. Now everyone will see what you tried to do. The viral storm had begun. And what they did not know was that this was only the beginning. Public disgrace was just the first chapter of their payment. Tell me, listener, if your family tried to strip you of everything, would you fight in silence or in public? Comment below, and subscribe because the fallout will be darker than the storm itself. It did not take long. By the time the last guest stumbled out into the snow, clutching coats and excuses, the video had already escaped our walls. Within an hour, it had been shared across half the city, then half the state. By morning, it was trending $2 million estate betrayal. I watched the numbers climb from my grandmother's library, the glow of the screen reflecting off her framed photographs. 10,000 views. 50,000. Comments stacked one on another, like falling bricks. Greed like this ruins families. Protect your inheritance, girl. I'd cut them off too. My phone buzzed without pause. Reporters wanted statements. Strangers wanted interviews. Lawyers I had never met offered free consultations, eager to ride the wave. Meanwhile, my family scrambled. My sister deleted her accounts, but not before screenshots of her posts, photos bragging about future renovations to her house circulated widely. My mother issued a vague statement about misunderstandings, which only fanned the flames. My father refused to answer the door when journalists knocked. At work, colleagues avoided eye contact, unsure if they should congratulate me or pity me. In the break room, someone whispered, "That's her, the one from the video." I carried my coffee like armor and said nothing. Silence once again was my friend. But silence online does not exist. Every minute the story grew. A podcast dissected the clip, calling it the perfect parable of inheritance and greed. A legal forum debated whether my family's actions counted as attempted fraud. Even a late-night comedian joked, "At least this Christmas someone brought receipts." Behind the laughter, consequences gathered. A detective left a card at my door. Preliminary inquiry, it read. Words like attempted fraud and coercion appeared in conversations with my attorney. My sister's fiancé tried to distance himself. He posted that he had no part in family disputes, though he had sat at my table grinning at promises built on theft. His business partners began pulling out of deals. Reputation, I learned, collapses faster than stone. For my mother, humiliation cut deepest. Once the admired hostess, she could no longer show her face at church without whispers. She called me in tears, begging me to retract the video. I let it go to voicemail. Do not mistake this for joy. Revenge does not taste like sugar. It tastes like iron, like blood on your tongue, after biting too hard, but it sustains you all the same. I poured through messages from strangers, some cruel, some kind, all confirming that the world had seen. That was enough. My family had wanted to shame me quietly, in controlled circles. I had flipped the light, and now their shame was endless, uncontained. Christmas ended with silence. No calls, no invitations, only the distant thud of my phone as notifications rolled in. And here's the cruelest truth: humiliation was only the beginning. What they did not know was that the law had already started moving slow but steady, and soon it would be more than reputation they lost. Tell me, listener, if your family turned on you for money, would you expose them to the world or keep it private? Comment below. And subscribe, because the twist that follows is sharper than any camera clip. January thawed the snow into slush, but the ice between me and my family only hardened. Calls went unanswered. Emails bounced back with short lines: "Stop this, Evelyn," or "Think of appearances." They still clung to appearances even when the world had already seen their faces twisted in greed. Then came the meeting with my lawyer. He greeted me with that same calm I had paid for, slid a folder across the polished wood, and said, "Your grandmother prepared more than a will. She prepared a safeguard." Inside was an addendum, handwritten, notarized a month before her last hospital stay. The script was unmistakable, her neat cursive, the loops tight and certain. One sentence stood out, underlined by her own hand. Evelyn is sole heir and executor, granted full discretion to deny access to the property for cause. Cause shall include evidence of coercion, fraud, or disrespect. Disrespect. My grandmother had written that word deliberately. She had known them. She had known me. The lawyer leaned back. She left this as insurance. She anticipated conflict. The estate is untouchable. No division, no transfer. It is yours beyond dispute. I sat very still. For a moment, grief and triumph tangled in my chest. She had trusted me alone, not because I was the eldest, not because I worked in finance, but because she saw through them long before I dared to. When the news broke, because of course it did, the reaction was swift. Headlines shifted from family betrayal to grandmother's final wish. Sympathy flowed my way. Hatred doubled toward them. My mother showed up at the gate one evening, scarf tight around her face. She pleaded through the bars. She did not mean to cut us out. We are still family. Family, I answered, was the word you weaponized. I will not hear it again. My sister tried a different tactic. She posted a tearful video online, claiming she had been misunderstood, that stress and jealousy had clouded her judgment. Comments shredded her. Screenshots of her email flooded the replies. Half the estate is mine by right. Viral shame leaves no room for revision. As for my father, he vanished into silence. A man who had once demanded my obedience, now hid from the very voices he had once hoped to impress. Silence can be a prison as much as a refuge. Here is the truth. I had not expected revenge did not end with humiliation. It ended with revelation that my grandmother had known, had written protection into law, had placed her trust solely in me. The estate was never theirs to covet. It was always meant as both gift and test. And I passed not by generosity, but by refusing to yield. But what they did not know was that I would not simply keep the estate. I would use it in a way none of them could touch, a way that honored the one person who never betrayed me. Tell me, listener, have you ever discovered that someone believed in you more deeply than you believed in yourself? Share it and subscribe, because the ending will not be about money. It will be about closure. The storm left silence in its wake. Not the brittle silence of resentment, but the steady quiet of doors finally closed. For the first time in months, I could walk the halls of the house without feeling eyes at my back. The rooms belonged to me not as trophies, not as leverage, but as living space again. I stood in the library where my grandmother's handwriting still curled in the margins of her books. I traced her words: keep receipts, keep faith, keep watch, and realized she had given me more than property. She had given me a map. The estate, valued at $2 million, no longer felt like a burden or a contested prize. It felt like capital that could be moved, reshaped, turned into something larger than the house itself. So I created a scholarship fund in her name, the Evelyn Margaret Foundation. Its purpose was simple: provide tuition for young women in finance who had no family backing, no safety net. I seeded it with $600,000 from my savings and pledged a portion of the estate's income every year. The announcement drew press again, but this time the coverage was different. Heir turns family scandal into legacy fund. From viral betrayal to public good. For once, the headlines carried no sting. My mother did not call again. My sister tried once more, sending a long letter heavy with apologies and lighter with excuses. I left it unopened. My father never resurfaced in any meaningful way. They had all become background noise static on a channel I no longer tuned to. Neighbors stopped whispering. Instead, they nodded when I passed, as if the scandal had marked me with a strange kind of authority. At work, colleagues no longer avoided me. Some even asked quietly for advice on their own estates, their own tangled families. One evening, I hosted a small gathering in the dining room, the same room where humiliation had first spilled. This time it was not family, but scholarship recipients, young women with bright eyes and heavy books under their arms. They sat under the chandelier, laughing easily, unaware of the history burned into the wood beneath their elbows. I raised a glass, not in bitterness, but in tribute. To my grandmother, who believed that money is a language, and that how you spend it is how you are remembered. The room answered with clinking glasses, with gratitude, with possibility. I will not lie to you, listener. Revenge satisfied me, yes. Watching them shrink under the weight of their own greed was a kind of justice. But what lingers now is not the flavor of vengeance. It is the knowledge that I turned their attempt to erase me into something that will outlive all of us. The house remains mine, the estate remains whole, but the true inheritance is dignity. Dignity kept dignity, passed forward. So, I close the door on that chapter. The vault is not theirs to raid. It is mine to open on my own terms. If you think I made the right choice, comment right. If you have a better way, share your idea below. And remember, this family can betray money, can corrupt, but legacy is written only by the one who holds the pen.